Hello, disc golf fans, and welcome back to another episode of Running It with Nate Sexton. I'm your co-host, Jarett Orr. He is what many consider the unofficial voice of disc golf, which officially makes him my favorite podcast host, and my partner, Mr. Nate Sexton. Nate, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. We had a beautiful sunny day here. Everything going well. Got out and played some golf yesterday with my wife and daughter. It's been a good weekend and starting off with a good week.
I threw my favorite destroyer in the drink today, so I'm not doing great.
You got to have a back. If you need a backup, man, I can help you. I have a couple. It's all right.
Oh yeah, see, it's about knowing a guy. I like
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Yeah, well, we can get you taken care of, no problem.
Some amazing coverage from disc golf from the past weekend. It's always fun watching Paul and Ricky battle it out. Did you get a chance to catch any of that?
Yes, I saw the last 6 or 7 holes live. Obviously, I was checking the U-Disc all weekend because I always am doing that. But actually got to sit down and watch the Disc Golf Network coverage for the last bit, and unbelievable. I mean, couple of guys, you can't play better. I mean, it just doesn't even compute really to say you average 1074 and you lose by 2. Some other crazy stats I read. There was a stretch in the final round where Paul McBeth went -7 in 10 holes and lost 5 shots to Ricky Wysocki because Ricky Wysocki was 12 under in those same 10 holes. So, I mean, it's just crazy. Those guys they blitzed the field. They've done it before. I hope they'll do it again. They're two of the best. Just incredible. Anytime we get a chance to see those guys go toe to toe when they're both healthy and playing great, it's just disc golf has not been done better very many times than how those guys do it.
All right, Nate, now before we kick off another amazing interview, we got to take care of a little bit of business. And of course, you guys already know, I'm talking about our friends over at FisherDiscGolf.com. FisherDiscGolf.com has all of your disc golf needs, everything from discs, apparel, baskets. They're really just doing it the right way. You can follow them on social media. They're at Fisher Disc Golf on Facebook and Instagram. Of course, every Tuesday and Friday night, they do the disc stacks. That's at 8 p.m. 8 p.m. Eastern time. You can find that on Facebook or YouTube. Now, Nate, I don't know if you saw this or not, but Fisher had a little bit of scare. One of the Fisher members came down with COVID, so I know they're taking a few days off. So I don't know if they'll be back to disc stacks this Friday, but we are certainly thinking about everybody over at Fisher Disc Golf here at Running It with Nate Sexton. Hope everything works out well for you guys. I know you're all in a little bit of a quarantine, so hopefully you guys are catching up on some Running It and watching some disc golf. But for everybody listening, go ahead and check them out. They really have some amazing discs, guys, whether it's the collector plastic that they still have in, and they're constantly getting new drops from Innova and all of the brands that are out there. Check out FisherDiscGolf.com, and just for listening to this show, you can go ahead and save yourself a little bit of money. How do they do that, Nate?
Use our code RUNIT10 to save 10%, and it's always free shipping. Also, just want to say speedy recovery. Hope those guys are doing all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Great group. So FisherDiscGolf.com, go ahead and check them out. It's one of the best ways to support the show is by supporting our sponsors. Now, Nate, we got a little bit of a late jump here on the East Coast to get this one out for everybody. And thanks to our friends over at Cab Coffee Roasters, I was able to get myself a cup of coffee in, get myself a little pumped up, ready for the episode, and I don't have to worry about that horrible sugar crash from those crazy energy drinks that I used to get. Hudson went ahead and sent us over some coffee. I'm just about out of it, so it's going to be time for me to get more soon. But the coffee's just been amazing. I'm not a huge coffee guy myself. I've become a coffee guy because of Cab Coffee Roasters. Now, not only because they sponsor this show and help us get this content out for our listeners, but Hudson and the folks over at Cab are just doing some amazing things. You've heard us talk about how he got started and doing all of these amazing things for folks within the disability community. Check out Cab Coffee Roasters. Make sure you're following them on social media. They're on Facebook and Instagram at Cab Coffee Roasters. All the information there to pick up your favorite kind of coffee. He's constantly coming up with new flavors, and it's just a great way to help out a small business, somebody who's taken a leap in kind of a tough time in economy right now. But when you have a product like Hudson has, and you're doing the things that he's doing, it's good to do. So for you guys to check this out, check out Cab Coffee Roasters. Nate, how you doing on your Cab Coffee, man?
Also running out, but loving it. I've been drinking it every morning, and I'm going to continue doing that. It's the same story for us. You can save 10% on your first order with the code RUNIT10 over at Cab Coffee Roasters. Give it a try. I'm definitely on. I'm in it. I mean, it's really good. I feel like I'm looking forward to having it every morning. Like I said, I mean, I'm not like a coffee snob. I'm definitely a coffee drinker every day. But yeah, it's better than the Starbucks stuff that I have. And I'm going to get subscribed so I can get it just showing up and I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Check them out. You can follow them on Instagram or Facebook at Cab Coffee Roasters. We're constantly sharing their stuff, so you can follow us at Running It with Nate Sexton on both Facebook and Instagram. And I will go ahead and continue sharing links for Hudson and the crew over at Cab Coffee Roasters. Go ahead and check them out. Again, guys, the number one way to support the show is by supporting our sponsors. So go ahead and check them out and see what they have to offer. Now, Nate, we're coming off of an awesome episode from last week. We had the 1984 world champ, Sam Ferrans, on with us. Some amazing feedback on that show. One of the things that I'm really noticing here is people love to have your friends from tour on and hear those stories, but people are really enjoying the history of disc golf and some of the stories that maybe we're not as familiar with. And you went ahead and lined up an opportunity for us to do that just again for our listeners. Who are we running it with today, Nate?
We're going a lot deeper. I mean, no slight to Sam at all, but if he seemed old school, we're going even farther back this time because we're so lucky to be joined for this episode by PDGA number 3, which we'll get to that. But Dan Stork Roddick, incredible. So glad to have him.
Hey, it's a delight to be with you folks.
Thanks for joining the show. I'm really excited. Obviously, we have met a few times, but I've been excited all week just to get the chance to kind of sit down and be able to talk to you for an extended amount of time because it's always like, me running up to get your autograph real quick in Santa Cruz a couple of years ago. I actually did that and that, I haven't got too many autographs in my career, but that was one where I felt like, man, I really got to get this guy to sign a disc. This is so cool to see somebody who is kind of there for the whole beginning of everything as it relates to flying discs. So really excited to get the chance to have you on the show.
Well, I gotta share a story with you that these days, I more than a few times sign Ed Hedrick autographs because there's a lot of young kids out there, and at this point, I look kind of like him, and a kid will come up and go, "Steady Ed, right? 001," and I don't want to disappoint him, so I just sign it.
Those are probably pretty rare, getting those Ed Hedrick autographs in 2021. That's hard to find. Wow, that's incredible. But yeah, I do remember, coming up to you there in Santa Cruz a couple of years back. You were nice enough before we did this interview, when you agreed to do this, to send me a link to Lynn Warren's profile of you, and that was actually in the final issue of Disc Golf World magazine. That was winter 2008. And I was able to read through that and get a little bit more deeper look at kind of your story as it relates to disc sports. So after that, I kind of made some notes for myself, and I'd love to just kind of hear in your own words some of those stories that were kind of briefly highlighted in that article. If you're okay with that, I'd just love to hear some more.
Sure. I warn you, it's kind of difficult. I mean, like you're at a party, and eventually somebody says, "So I hear you're into Frisbee."
Yeah.
Where do you
Well, no,
go?
I'm not. Yeah, no, I'm not going to leave you hanging like that. I've got much more specific notes for you. You don't have to just start talking. I want to start off just kind of in the very beginning. You were born 1948, and you were already throwing discs in the 50s. With your father, and there was a little kind of passage in there. You guys were basically playing disc golf, though not thinking of it as golf in any way. What was it you were calling it? Like and you called them flying saucers right at that time. Nobody really, Frisbee wasn't even a word.
Well, we were probably for most of that throwing actual flying saucers. Pipco. The first disc I had was a Pipco flying saucer, and then we had an early Wham-O flying saucer, and Dad was an astronomer, ran a planetarium, so we were kind of space oriented, and the game that we were playing in the backyard was a space race, essentially. So we each had our little spaceship, and we would see how many flights it took to land at the base of a tree. And I keep wishing that I could say, because Dad was a really, really good ball golfer, and shot a 69 once.
Wow.
But we never looked at each other and said, "Hey, this is Frisbee golf." I'm kind of embarrassed. We were playing space race.
Well, I mean, as a 10, 12-year-old, who could blame you? Space race kind of sounds better. I love disc golf a lot, but I could go for a game of space race. That sounds pretty compelling.
You'd be good at it.
Yeah, so pretty cool just to imagine, the very beginning. It's like there wasn't even really flying disc sports as anything like we know now. It's just sort of like a party game, or something you might grab before you go to the beach. But then things started to accelerate, I'd say, for you, and in some ways because of you, because as you kind of grew up and kept that passion, it seemed like you guys attended some like World's Fairs and saw some demonstrations, and then turned out that like you guys were kind of like better throwers than some of the people who were demonstrating because you'd been doing it a long time. And then getting into college, I saw this little part in the article that really caught my interest from when you were at Millersville State College, talking about the longest continuous Frisbee game, like a world record. And it said that it went for 2.5 months, and I can't imagine, is this around the clock, or is this a daytime only activity?
Daytime only.
Around the clock.
That's no record.
That's kind of what I thought, but I just couldn't imagine every night for 2.5 months there was people playing catch all at 4 a.m.
There was a huge sign-up list on my dorm room door, and friends would come by and would sign up, and there were open slots, and there was no email, so you kind of had to go out and knock on doors and say, "Hey, we need somebody for the 3 to 4 a.m. tomorrow.
Wow.
You guys good?" And that ran that long. But fast forward, when I was at Rutgers with the Ultimate team, I don't know how long it was, but I think we went for almost an entire semester.
Yeah, it did say that later, that you guys bested your own record, but I just couldn't even, the 2.5 months boggled my mind. I mean, even with an army of people interested, it's like the sign-up sheet on that 2:30 a.m., 3 a.m. every single night, I mean, through the rain, whatever it is, it's just crazy to think that there were people playing a continuous game of catch. It said like anywhere from just the required 2, the minimum 2, up to 50 people during the day on a sunny day out there playing. But yeah, pretty crazy to think to have the sign-up sheet and go through it for that long, and then again to better that record later. Not something I don't know. I don't assume it's been beaten, but I mean that's not an easy feat. It almost would have to be a college, I think.
Yeah, well, it fit right in, and it got huge. I mean, the radio station was coming out and doing remotes from there. Vincent Price was on campus for some show, and he came and he threw. That made the IFA news, and it was the kind of thing you do in college. It was, and when you're a Frisbee nut.
Yeah, and speaking of College Ultimate and in your time at Rutgers, I played College Ultimate as well, but I think it might have been a little different because you actually played in the inaugural Collegiate Ultimate game. This is in 1972. Keep in mind, for those that maybe don't know, Ultimate was only like invented in 1968, I think, by a high schooler who brought that idea of a sport to his school. So this is only 4 years later. Like, I got to imagine literally no one knows what it is. And then you guys had the very first game, Princeton against Rutgers, 103 years to the day after the first ever collegiate football game that was contested between those same two schools. And if I was reading it right, in the exact same spot, though it was no longer a field, it was now a parking lot.
Yes. And and the 4 years is because it was invented at Columbia High School in New Jersey, and they had the high school league of schools around Columbia. And then when those kids started to graduate, they said, okay, this isn't the end of it. We're taking this to our colleges. And that's when it started to explode out to colleges. So when I arrived at Rutgers, I was showing up there for grad school. And so Irv Kalb was there from Columbia, one of the initiators of it at Columbia. And that first game, Johnny Hines from Columbia was down at Princeton. And then Irv and Jeff West and other movers and shakers there at Rutgers had the tremendous idea to say, hey, we're close to this anniversary. Let's just do all those things like the first game. And it was an unbelievable event. I mean, we went out on this parking lot and started to play, and somehow students found out about it through the paper and word of mouth, and then they started to cheer in a way, and every time there was a pull, they made a huge noise. And that quickly drew a crowd to where it was 10 deep all around the pitch. The entire field was packed. It was crazy. And then Jeff and others had done so good a job of advertising it that it was completely covered by local media. Jim Bouton was there from New York Station. And that night, after we had beaten Princeton by 2, just like in the football game, it was everywhere. It was full page spread, top to bottom, in the New Brunswick paper. It was in the New York Times. It was in Sports Illustrated. I mean, we were just blown away, and we said, oh my God, that was just the first game. Next week we're going to be on Monday Night Frisbee. I mean, and the next game was Friends and Family.
It just sounds unbelievable is the right word. It just sounds so surreal. The article was talking about perhaps up to 1,000 fans. Were you like aware of Ultimate before coming to Rutgers that was a thing, or was it kind of like, hey, these are the rules, and how official were the rules? Like, did everyone on that parking lot understand the rules to be the same thing, or was it developed to that level, or what?
Everyone on the parking lot understood because they all had pretty solid connections to the Columbia group and the New Jersey High School League. So
yeah, okay.
That was all pretty well established. For me, when I got to Rutgers, I had only seen Ultimate in Goldie Norton's book. That was the first book on Frisbee sports, and Ultimate was mentioned in there. I knew of it vaguely, but I had spent years at home playing Frisbee football, which was essentially the same throw and catch deal. So when I met Irv and we went out to play catch, he said, oh my, you're going to like Ultimate. You're very big.
Yeah.
And you can already throw and catch. This is going to be good.
Yeah, and it turns out it was good because, for people that don't know, this is the perfect time to tell this story, I guess, because you were named the MVP of that inaugural game. It said you caught 10 goals and threw for something like 6 more, and Rutgers ultimately won the game. And it sounds like your moniker, your nickname Stork, was just like organically generated by the fans on that day, right? Where they were just Stork, 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 like, and you were like, what are they even? Why are they saying Stork?
How long is your show, Nate?
As long as you've got.
Okay. Fast forward a number of years later, Irv and I had just won the World Freestyle Championship. We're doing halftime for the Philadelphia 76ers at the Spectrum. We do the halftime. We come off, and the guy who's the promotions guy said, "Oh, you guys were great. You guys were great. I went to Rutgers." You know, "Oh, cool." You know, he says, "Do you know how you got your nickname Stork?" I said, "Well, in the first game, you know, people started chanting Stork, and that's how I got named." He says, "No, do you know exactly how you got it?" I said, "Well, I don't know. Tell me." He said, "Well, I was in a fraternity house that was on the street by the field, and we were watching the game, and we saw you, and I said to the brothers, 'Hey man, that dude looks like a stork. Let's start chanting.' And so I named you, and when they took you out and we started chanting Stork, 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 and they brought you back in, then everybody started chanting. That was my bed sheet hanging in the second half that said, 'The hell with McGovern, Stork for president.' That was my bed sheet." Oh my God! Needless to say, I just had to pinch myself and say, "Is this really happening?"
I can't believe that he waited till after your halftime show to let that story out. I feel like I wouldn't be able, like, as soon as I was in contact with you, like, "Oh, so you're going to come here and do this halftime?" I'd be like, hey, you're a stork. I got to tell you this.
It was, people say you're supposed to, get your nickname through some mystical process, and that'll do for me.
Yeah, I'll say to be in the very first game ever, first contest ever, and in the win, Rutgers also strangely won the first football game ever in 1869, also by 2 goals or 2 points. It's kind of, even in Ultimate now, I played Ultimate a long time, and I still don't really know whether I want to call it goals or points. I feel like points, but whatever you want to do. But yeah, incredible to think that you were there for that, and then, even as you were saying, freestyle world championship, kind of like, I don't, you'll be able to fill me in on this, but like the idea of even having an overall tournament, which we've kind of touched on this show, a lot of our listeners obviously much newer and much more disc golf centric, but the idea of an event that has like 7 or 8 events, like accuracy, distance, self-caught flight events, freestyle, golf, all that stuff, like the idea of even doing that is a lot to do with you, isn't it?
Well, we developed the Octad at Rutgers. It was the first of the big multi-event meets. The Berkeley Frisbee group had multi-event tournaments earlier that included MTA, distance. They might have had accuracy, I'm not sure, but the big game week featured that. But we extended it to 8, and I was essentially coming off of the growing up with my dad was both football and track and field coach, and so I had kind of an image in my mind of a like a decathlon, if you will, that would test a number of different skills. And so that's when, like, Gary Subert and Flash Eberly and I put together this 8 event opportunity for people to come and play and compare their skills. And at the time we were just starting to publish Flying Disc World, and so we publicized it to our vast audience of 120 readers, and a surprising number of them came and played, and we really had many of the very best overall players came to it. But a thing for our listeners now to know is that if they have any interest in trying this sometime, and there are places to do it, Virginia State is a perfect example of it. If you're playing pretty good golf, you've already got a great start on the skill set for lots of the events. I'm not saying that you're ready to freestyle, and you may need to spend a little time at DDC, but if you're throwing well, that's a great start at being a pretty solid overall player.
I've competed in one, and it was a long time ago. I think like 2001 or 2. I was in high school, and it was great. I haven't. I would someday. I'll have to try again. I would need to sharpen my skills on a lot of that stuff, but it is a cool idea, and yeah, just it is a fun thing to think about, to test so many different dynamics and different disc types and angles and throwing styles. And then obviously freestyle throws a whole nother wrench in it, because I don't have much I can bring to the table there, maybe a little bit, but cool. That's really incredible to think that that was just kind of like something that was developing on the West Coast and the East Coast, but just kind of like on a, not a whim. A whim sounds too casual, but that you guys just kind of came up with that idea and got everyone, in what essentially is like the equivalent of an email list. You were making like a magazine publication, but that just because you didn't have any easier way to keep people abreast of what was going on in disc sports, right?
Right. And I mean, when I look back on it, I was working at the Rutgers Mental Health Center, just to be clear. I was employed there. And we lived there as well. And so I had the keys to the duplicating room. And that was a large part of how we floated the budget for the magazine. I don't know if anybody was keeping count of the materials in there, but let's just say our budget for printing materials was quite low.
Wow. So then, okay, so I guess we got to go to this 1974 AFDO, which was that part of that same Octad event, or is that something else?
No, the Octad, the Rochester group came down to Octad, including Jim Palmieri, and part of what we talked about when he came down was this upcoming event that he was planning, this American Flying Disc Open. And the deal was that he was going to, wait for it, give away a brand new car. And the thing about Palmieri is that I call him the second most enthusiastic person in disc sports. Tom Schott is first. And then there's Jim. And so people were kind of taking it with a grain of salt that, everything's true about the AFDO except for the brand new car, and we didn't know whether it was really going to happen or not. But that was completely a Rochester event. But of course, everybody who was at Octad was a pretty strong candidate to come up for this other event that was golf and DDC. Those two events combined to win the car. And so we prepared for that because, again, you're kind of looking at it so early in the going and you're thinking, man, this thing is really growing. I mean, we got 25 new subscribers to the magazine last month, and now there's a tournament to give away a brand new car. I mean, the sky's the limit with this thing. I mean, it's wild. And so we went up to the tournament.
Yeah, and you did well. You won the golf portion by 13 throws. Do you recall how many rounds it took you to build a 13 throw lead?
It was three rounds, I believe, and I was absolutely gobsmacked. I couldn't believe it, because real serious players, better athletes than I, were there. Victor Malafronte and Kirkland and John Conley and Bruce Koger and Doug Correa, and people that, I mean, I don't know what the betting line was, but I don't think it included me. And but it turned out that I had a number of things going for me. One is that I had more ball golfing experience under my belt, having played with Dad for all those years. And a lot of the other players didn't really. They were maybe superior throwers, but their course management thought process really wasn't as advanced. The other thing was Palmieri's solution to finishing the hole, because at Octad we had simply ribboned trees. That was our knot, and they were all trees. At least it was organized, So, but Palmieri had a square box on the ground that I guess was maybe, I don't know, 5 inches high and 3 feet on the side. That's probably close to the dimension.
Wow. So
And,
very, very short.
oh yeah, very, very short. And nobody other than the Rochester people had ever seen it before. And so I'm kind of looking at that and I'm thinking, well, what's my solution to this? And so my solution was on anything that you would now call a short approach shot. I'm throwing a vertical reverse, I don't know what you would call it. It's
Like a backspin, like the sharpest hyzer ever. Backspin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a mini spike hyzer.
But thrown from the same side, thrown from the right side of your body. Like, so you're just like backspinning it totally vertical.
Well, big point. I'm left-handed.
Okay, sorry. I should have had that. That should have been in my research, I'm sure. Left side of the body.
More left-handed than anyone you know. Anyway,
Yeah.
So, yes. So it's over vertical, essentially.
Yes.
It's over vertical. And so it's dive bombing and occasionally staying in the basket, in the box. Or if not, it's close.
Did it have to stay in the box?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so it's like it's got walls, and then it's like hollow in the middle, but it's only like a 5-inch wall.
Correct. It's
Wow.
just it's a fort, a little fort.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm throwing these vertical spikes. Well, like Victor is throwing, backhands in there. It's like trying to land a jet plane on a card table.
Yeah.
I mean, it skips off the edge and goes. And mine are staying close. And then, okay, so that's the second factor, ball golf, this spike hyzer. And then when you're close, the rule was that you couldn't have any contact in front of your lie until you had released the disc. And so, hey, they're giving away a car. So I just said, I'm doing a full facial and dunking it, because I also was a basketball player at the time. I'm dunking it every time. So I came off that first round, like I had been in mud wrestling, and I'm just dunking this thing every time. So no missed short putts, and 2 meters tall, so pretty good reach.
So you could almost dive forward, and you could leave the ground.
No, you had to stay on your lie, but you couldn't touch any spot in front of it.
So you could like fall forward, and as long as the disc was down before your body, you were good.
Right. And I remember coming off of the field and going to Palmyra, and I said, Jim, we don't want to do this for the rest of our lives. We can't have falling putting. Okay, you can't fall and putt. You got to stay behind the lie and establish your balance. He said, yeah, that's probably a good idea. Let's do that.
But not in time to stop you from taking a car.
Oh, no.
No, not, of course not. And what was the car?
It was a Datsun, a beautiful green. Maybe it was originally for the military. I don't know. A beautiful green Datsun B210. And just to tell you my level of confidence, my wife and I had just bought a brand new Mustang a month before. So that tells you how confident I was.
That you were going to get in there and win a car.
And so I won the car, and I'm proud to say I kept it, came back, sold the damn Mustang, and I kept the Datsun B210, and in fact drove it out to California when I came to take the IFA job.
Wow. So was Ed Hedrick out there at that event in '74, or had you had met him at that point, I assume?
I had corresponded with him, but he was not at that event. Ed was kind of skeptical of the event, which is reasonable because Jim, was very enthusiastic.
Yeah.
And so I think Ed was kind of wondering whether this is real or not. Ed did come to later AFDOs, but not to the first one. But he definitely heard about it, and the results were written up in the IFA News, and pretty much everybody was talking about it. So he knew, and the next day at the AFDO, he was definitely there.
Yeah, I think everyone would be talking about it still now. I mean, a brand new car is no small prize. even by any standard, but really for any sport at that kind of level, anything where you aren't talking about actual like contracted, big time, big four professionals.
Well,
pretty incredible.
Adjusted for today's dollars, it's a Tesla S model.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? It's like that's pretty incredible.
Not quite.
Still, I mean, it must have been just a shocking thing to be able to have come out of there and win that, and I guess those other guys must have been pretty surprised to go down 13 throws to somebody they maybe didn't even really think of as a contender.
I'm sure they were, and there's no way around it. It's hard to compare. I've been a lucky guy. That first Rutgers Princeton game, once in a lifetime. The the day at AFDO, once in a lifetime. I mean, my folks were there. All my good buddies were there. I mean, Gary Subert, as we drove up in one car, and all the way up he's going, "Don't worry, Stork. There's going to be plenty of room on the way back." And we're laughing. Yeah, right. And by gosh, there was plenty of room on the way back.
Wow. So then, not too long after that was when you made that move to California, right? To work at Wham-O and to be involved more with what Ed was doing.
Yeah, I was doing Flying Disc World magazine and doing the Octad, and starting to, I guess, get on his radar a bit. And he was hearing the rumblings of this kind of emerging activity that was beyond just IFT, the ancient Guts tournament up in Michigan, which was the main activity that IFA was focusing on. And so we got to talking pretty regularly, and I'm now like almost done with my grad program, and ABD, haven't completed yet. But he says, "Well, would you like to come out and be the director of the International Frisbee Association?"
Which was a position that Ed held at that time, or it was a brand new position?
It was Irv Lander held the position, and Irv was a PR agent essentially for Wham-O, and to a large extent, the IFA and the IFA News were pretty clearly PR efforts of Wham-O to, of course, promote the Frisbee product. And Ed was ready to kind of turn the gauge and essentially make it real. He wanted to reach out. He saw Ultimate coming. He saw disc golf coming. He saw these multiple event tournaments coming and East Coast interest. And I think he just came to the conclusion, as did Irv. It's not like I didn't supplant Irv. Irv was ready to step back to the PR role, and Ed was ready to make it real. And he decided, I guess, that I was the guy to help him do that.
Yeah. So would it be fair to say, and I guess I've kind of gotten this impression, but would it be fair to say that like early high-level disc sports, a lot of it was sort of like promoted and pushed forward and funded by Wham-O, essentially to like make a commercial, almost like to have really amazing skills and to be able to show that to people, like Frisbees are really fun, get a Frisbee. And that was kind of like sort of the beginnings of a lot of that stuff, because it was like, we're the only ones that make Frisbees and we need them to be fun and we need them to look cool and we want kids to buy them, basically.
Well, definitely. And you got to give Ed a lot of credit for that, because there's lots of ways to promote things. And he developed the intercollegiate model when there really wasn't any intercollegiate play. When we first saw the pro intercollegiate, we thought, well, there must be college teams. No, not really. That was kind of just aspirational.
That was the name. That was the name of the disc.
The pro. But it had on the package the intercollegiate model. And of course, they kind of ripped off the Olympic rings again, a kind of an homage to, well, it's a real sport. It's an international sport.
Yeah.
And so all of those things were going on. And, well, just from the very beginning, you turn the underside of a Pluto platter and it says play catch, invent games. I mean, that was the charge. The charge was, hey, invent games with us. Let's see what you can do. And we took that pretty seriously.
Yeah, I'll say I'm glad that you guys did. It's pretty amazing how much has grown from that early time. You know, just like it just doesn't. It's a testament to how well it's all worked and how many people have adopted it, that even I, as like a total insider of disc golf and to some extent disc sports, it still kind of blows my mind to imagine like, oh, so this guy just sort of like invented DDC and he came over and said, hey, you guys, let's try this that I just thought of. And it, you know, and that really wasn't even that long ago. I mean, it's just sort of an amazing thing for me to think about and to have the opportunity to talk to you, who, you know, has kind of almost had a seat at the table for Ultimate and overalls and disc golf and the genesis of all these things that now seem like, is my career and is the career of thousands, among all the people that are in manufacturing and retail and playing and disc sports in general. It's just amazing what has been achieved.
It was one of the most exciting things about the job. And I mean, when I took the job to come in and be in that role, it wasn't taken lightly, because there was a career path ahead of me, and I was just about to end 6 years of work there at Rutgers and move on to the goal was to, like Dad, kind of be a college professor and maybe coach tennis, or who knows what.
Yeah.
But when I looked at it, I said, well, I can't spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder and thinking, what would it have been like if I'd done that? If I'd tried that. I've got to go at least try it. And then when I came, it was just such a wonderful opportunity. I mean, just an incredible chance to do so many interesting, creative things that, I mean, I just feel so blessed and lucky to have had that opportunity, and to have had all of the people that I got the chance to work with over the years, all of the enthusiasts that were so supportive, because, as you said, especially in the early going there, it was a naked promotion of Wham-O to build that product line. And so you could see that obviously people would have some questions in their mind about whether things were being done in the optimal development of disc sports. So it took a kind of a nimble programming of it to have it adjust to what the needs were, so that Wham-O was getting its best interests served, and we hoped that we were continually serving the best interests of the sport. And that was challenging at times, but I think when we look back on it, it was pretty productive era.
Yeah, we had Dave Dunapace on our show a few weeks back, and he kind of credited you with helping Ed realize the difference between Ultimate and its one disc per 28 players on a given day, and disc golf and its 10 or 12 discs per player on a given day, and the business model ramifications of that situation, and Dave made it sound like Ed was sort of like resistant to disc golf early on. And, he basically credited you with kind of changing Ed's thinking.
Well, the interesting thing is that Ed and I weren't at Wham-O for real long together, because he left Wham-O, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 months after I came. And it was interesting because when I came out, I mean, I didn't have anywhere to stay. My wife was back in social work school at Rutgers, and so I came out. So I stayed. He adopted me. I mean, I stayed with his family, and I mean, I'm an East Coast boy. You know, I didn't even know what an avocado was. All at once, I'm seeing guacamole on toast, and everybody on the whole block was these bronzed, blonde people, and we would ride into Wham-O in his big floater convertible every day. I'm going, yes, this is working out. This is working out really well. But then he had his differences with Wham-O management, and decided to leave Wham-O, and so we had the conversation where I said, "Geez, Ed, you know, if you want me to go, I'll go too. I don't want to undercut you." He said, "Nah, you stay. You're already out here," which he may have regretted in the future when we had disagreements down the line. But once he had gone, then I was Mr. Frisbee to Wham-O, and they're going, well, what do you need? You know, magazine, regional directors, NAS events, vans for the demonstrators. I mean, it was a dream situation where we could hardly even keep up. And Jo Cahow was there. She was there when I arrived. She became my assistant, and we started to hire people. And all at once, we had the thing going, and it was quite amazing. Needless to say, I was not getting much done on my thesis.
I can kind of understand your experience, I think, a little bit in that I was also, you know, just kind of getting my bachelor's degree and just going through college, following in the footsteps of my parents who were research assistants at Oregon State University, and just kind of getting my environmental science degree while like playing Frisbee, disc golf, and ultimate, you know, on the side. Mm-hmm. And I often sort of joke that I got as good as I did by accident, you know, in a way. It wasn't like a career. It wasn't like a legitimate career path in my view. It was just like a hobby. And it just more and more opportunities started opening up in front of me, to the point that I never really did anything with my degree, you know, to where I just, at least to this point, you know, I've just kind of taken more and more disc sport opportunities, and it's been going fantastically. But, you know, not to directly compare myself to what you've achieved in that space, but just to think about, you know, that I had a totally different plan. And I think that's probably pretty common in disc sports, because you'd be a bit crazy to put all your eggs in that basket beforehand, you know, and just target a career in disc sports, especially in 1975 or whenever that all happened.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm sure that you find, just as I have, that training and the work that you did still ends up being useful in terms of the skills that you developed.
Yeah, without a doubt. I don't regret any of that time that I spent. And yeah, I mean, I needed that degree. You know, technically, I guess the only thing I've used it for was you needed to have a college degree to teach at Oregon State University, where then I started teaching disc golf and ultimate and other PE classes, which was really fun and allowed me to practice a lot of disc golf, to be honest. So, you know, that was something that I technically, I guess, used that degree for, and I'm sure I'll use it again before all's said and done. But yeah, definitely, totally agree that the skills and even just life skills that I learned in those years continue to help me all the time. But yeah, bringing it back, I think, to disc golf, I got to hear it from you, the story, the origin of the 2-meter rule, because obviously the rumors swirl around, but I got to hear from you how that happened.
Octad, that first Octad that we were discussing, I was going over the rules, and some of which were quite interesting, actually, in retrospect. I was always trying to build athleticism into the various events. And so the rule on a lie was that, let's say you were behind a mandatory, you could come running up to the lie, take off as if it were a broad jump line, and fly forward if you released the disc before you landed.
That would be interesting.
That was the rule. But anyway, another of the rules, because if the disc got stuck up in a tree or a bush, the question was, how do you deal with it? And so I said, okay, well, the rule is that if it's in the structure somehow, that you can get your foot up to put it where the disc is. If you can put your foot there, then you can call that your lie and you play on. You have to put your foot up there and play on. Well, okay, I'm describing this. And Palmieri, who's like about, I don't know, what is he, 4'5", 4'7", something like that. He's down there somewhere in the crowd going, that's not fair, you're so tall. You know, I said, okay. How about, you're right. How about, let's make it, I'm 2 meters tall. I'll always be there, so to measure it. So let's say if it's over 2 meters, then it's a penalty stroke. You bring it straight down. If it's under 2 meters, you drop it to the ground and you play on. Okay, that's fair. Okay, fine. So that's where the rule came from.
And it continues to this day. That's just incredible.
It's had its problems. There was a period of time when it was optional. Finally we'll have something for your listeners to argue about. I'm a fan of the rule because I think it adds risk amplitude to a hole. Now, I know that people are out there mumbling, it's random. Well, it is random, but when you look out there in the fairway, there's a bit of a lottery that you're looking at, and you can decide to put yourself at risk in that lottery or to play it safe. And I'm always hoping that holes will give you an opportunity to take a risk and save a stroke, or if you don't succeed in that you will lose a stroke. I like to see strokes change hands. And incidentally, we should talk about whether they're strokes or throws. But anyway, and that amplitude is enhanced by having, if you throw and it's stuck 30 feet up in a tree, I say that is not a successful throw that you should be able to just bring down without penalty and play on. But I know there are legitimate arguments on the other side too, but that's what
I think I largely agree with you. I think I guess I tend to like it more the more consistently grabby the trees are. So like often it's a rule these days in California, and I feel like they have those kind of low oaks that are like really good. It's, of course, like De La Viega, you hit a tree, you're like all worried because it's that likely that it will hold on to it.
Yep.
And so then that's a little less random, which is nice. But I tend to agree, if you decided to throw all your throws under a height of 2 meters, you wouldn't get very many penalties if you wanted to play underneath. Than if you want to go up and over.
I'm thinking more of those air routes that
of course, yeah,
that are
of course,
that are risky. But that whole rough of the green question and random is an endless debate that is a fun one. But there's so many things that happen. I mean, when you watch people play and just who was it that just recently skipped off the top of the basket and into water? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You're going, geez, that seemed like a pretty good shot to me. So there's always going to be some of that baked into the game, and we just have to understand that's going to happen. But I say you could argue either side of it.
Yeah, it reminds me of just a video I just saw the other day, just a chance to shout out a friend of the show and fellow 2-meter human, Big Germ. I saw him throw his final shot at Waco just a couple weeks ago, 468 feet over the water the whole way, and he just hit the cage on the fly straight into the water. Just a bad break.
That's the one, right? That's the one that I was thinking of.
A tough break because it would have been one of those Sports Center hole-in-ones, like 468 feet over water. Speaking of once-in-a-lifetime events, that's one of them. Yes. And yeah, to bounce off in and go in. But I think I heard Jarett coming in. What do you got, Jarett?
Well, I just wanted to point out to my friends that we play with, I don't want you to pay attention to any of this. It's still play it as you lie. You still have to climb up the tree and shoot it from out of there. So that's how we've always been doing it. And you guys just disregard everything that these two greats have spoken about. We're still playing it as it lies.
See, and play, catch, invent games. I mean, invent games. You're just on that leading edge now, Jarett. You're taking the baton from Dan, and now you're taking it in your own direction, inventing new games.
I'm doing what I can. That's it. I'm just doing what I can.
As
Perfect.
long as you're within your 30 seconds, I think you're good.
Oh man! All right. Well, I guess I got to throw in a question that came to us from our last guest, from Sam Ferrans. And he told me to ask you if you had any kind of recommendations for maybe like a hot air balloon tour in the region of Helsingborg, Sweden. If you had any suggestions for a place.
That guy. It's funny because when we went to the first championship in Helsingborg, I can remember thinking back that my kind of fantasy was, a room with a young blonde, and it turned out it was Sam. Jeez. I think it ended that I was his chaperone, that his parents were very trusting. That was a really fun trip with him, and man, what a talent that guy was at that age. I mean, geez. I realize that we've got some young phenoms that are pretty amazing right now, but that guy, what did he weigh? 130 or something? And he just was a whip. It was fantastic to see him grow up and get to be such a dominant force, and of course now such a tremendous key to the industry, really.
Yeah. It was really fun getting to talk to him and hear that story about that money going missing for a number of months and all the rumors swirling around. But yeah, finally he did get his due for winning that title. And it was there in Sweden where you guys kind of like started WIFDIF. Is that the World Flying Disc Federation? Is that correct?
One of the first most substantial meetings was as part of that championship, yes, when Charlie Meade was put in place as the president, the initial president, and there had been a number of kind of fits and starts moving toward that, but that was the most substantial collection of people that moved the project forward. Yes.
And now, WIFDIF still exists now, and I don't know that our listeners will be aware of it, but it's kind of like again, you'll be able to correct me here, but kind of like the organization that's like shepherding and stewarding like the official world records and things like that, across all these age groups and that kind of thing. Is that kind of the main function of that organization at this time?
It's much broader than that. WFDF is really the interface of disc sports to the world sports community. They have a relationship with the IOC.
Okay.
And also with World Games. They manage all of the international ultimate play, and in fact have committees in each of the disciplines. WFDF annually does an international team event in disc golf. It manages the international Guts Championships and also sanctions the world overall. You mentioned the world records. I have been the archivist for WFDF for many years. I was the president off and on for a number of years, as was Bill Wright and a number of other people. But the one constant is that I have been the archivist for the records since 70. I guess we began collecting them for Flying Disc World, then moved it on to Frisbee World, and I just entered a couple of records today. So I've been doing that continuously, more than any other thing in my life, I think, now that I think about it.
Wow. It's a pretty cool project to be able to keep all that in one place and be able to kind of. I've definitely spent some time just reading down the list and going, "Oh man, that record's been standing 20 years," or just kind of looking at all the different distances and maximum time aloft or whatever else it is. It's interesting to take a look at for sure.
Well, take a look at distance under non-human.
Okay.
That is, we have a distance record from a sea lion at the St. Louis Zoo, and he or she, I can't remember. Anyway, holds the record for non-human distance. But I'll give you one little interesting world record story that Christer Fuglesang was a Swedish player who became one of their astronauts. And so he was going up and was about to do an international broadcast from the space station. And he got in contact with the Svenska Frisbeeförbundet and said, I want to set the MTA record while I'm up in the shuttle. And so my friends at SFF contacted me and he said, hey, Christer, it wants to do the MTA record. Can you sanction it? I said, oh, this is awkward. No gravity. My friend Donnie Kane has had the record for these many years of like 17 seconds, something like that. Let me get back to you. So I'm going, what are we going to do here? It could be like 5 minutes. It could be forever.
Yeah.
So I in a kind of a blaze of recognition, I went back to them and said, okay, we're going to approve him for the intergalactic record.
Yes.
Okay, it's going to be the first of the intergalactic records. I'm sure there'll be records for other planets in the future, but right now, intergalactic. So he did it on international television. He tossed it up, didn't catch the first one, hit against the wall, tossed up another with a little bit of spin. He was kind enough to have it go, I forget how long it went, but probably 4 times Donnie's record, and he caught it. We verified him for the intergalactic record, and then I immediately went back to the SSF and I said, okay, he's on an EVA tomorrow. Have him throw a distance throw. Okay, when he's out there, just have him zing one. And they said, well, but how will we measure it? Okay, I'll enter it as to be determined. And he couldn't get it past his damn people in the administration said, oh, we don't want any space junk out there. Oh my gosh. Everything that's floating around out there, they couldn't have one AVR extra floating out there.
Oh, wow. We're going to have a chance. Maybe talk to Elon Musk or somebody. I feel like he would support the Frisbee record up in space.
Oh, absolutely. That sounds like him.
He might allow a throw. All right. Well, I think we can get there. I don't want to take too much of your time, and I know Jarett has a fan questions coming. I guess the last thing I want to talk to you about is, are you still throwing some discs these days, or what disc sports do you still enjoy now?
Let me tell you something, Nate. During this pandemic, I have become more fascinated and driven about throwing than any time in my career.
Wow.
I have been throwing every evening, and I have determined to rebuild my throw from scratch. I have never been a good distance thrower, and I have been so fascinated with the emerging kinesiology and the mechanics of throwing that I have torn apart every component of my throwing. And I have been out there. I have never been more fired up about throwing than I am now. My wife, I'm driving her crazy because I am continually having her video me. And then I'm walking around in the living room going, did that seem faster? Now watch carefully. Does this look like the power pocket of the video we're looking at? look, as I pull, does it look to you like I'm leading with the elbow? Is my hip going first? When I plant my foot, do you think I'm turning on my heel or am I turning more? I'm telling you, I am just as excited about throwing as I have ever been. And I'm not saying that I've turned the world around and that I'm ready to break the record, but it has been so satisfying to clean up problems that I've had, mainly from my freestyle and ultimate background, that I was doing so many things wrong. And I've had a good many friends in the sport who have helped me and looked at videos, and I'm just eating up all these things that are online. You know, I mean, I'm looking at Ezra and going, I've got to go to the gym. Okay. There's the problem. I need my forearms to be much, much bigger.
Yeah, I've caught myself thinking the same thing. Wow.
And so I've just been really into it, and watching the pros like you throw and make it look so effortless, and the women players, the way they just whip it out there. And I say, I'm going to find the secret to this. It's a bullwhip. I'm going to learn how to crack it. So the answer is yes, I am way into it.
That is awesome. So it's safe to say you're seeing some results already, it sounds like.
I am. But I'll tell you, the main thing about it is that it feels so good. It really feels so good. It is tremendously challenging because there's so many components. In comparison with throwing implements in track and field, I mean, I know still that I still don't have a tack angle right, because discs that should be turning for me are not consistently turning. And so I'm still struggling with that. But the fun is in the battle. And of course, the interesting completion of it is that we're also working with my grandkids who are 5 and 7. And so Tyler's my son, who's a very good thrower, once was third in distance to Sandstrom and Vogt in the world. And we're teaching our 5 and 7-year-olds right now, and they're just like little sponges. I mean, my 7-year-old granddaughter has much better mechanics than I do, which is frustrating. But but it's just the greatest thing ever. Really.
Yeah, and if anybody was going to question whether it's like a lifetime sport, and whether you can ever, like, the beauty of all sports really, but I don't know why it is with disc sports even more so, but just that you just never master it. You just keep going and you keep going, and it's like you're tweaking things and you're changing things, and it's like you can never stop wanting more from yourself, which is like kind of what makes it so special. I think that you always want to keep coming back, because it's like there's always tomorrow to go and throw a better one.
I'll tell you, my dad was still throwing competitively in his 90s. He had the 95-year-old distance mark until Don Shin came along and smashed it.
Wow.
But it extended Dad's life many, many years. I mean, he was excited to play overall in his 70s, his 80s, his early 90s, and I aspire to that myself. I take that as my lead, and we got some pretty good genes, so I hope to break Don's record.
That would be great. Wow, that's great. That's so cool. I'm smiling big now just hearing that you're out there every day tweaking things and still working. That's cool. Jarett, I'm sure we got some fan questions, huh? I don't want to keep Dan too crazy long, even though I feel like we're barely scratching the surface on all this stuff. But obviously, we would have you back anytime you would like. I'll probably say that again at the close of the episode. But let's get to some fan questions and see what people want to know.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing I need to know, though, Dan, is how far is that sea lion throwing?
I'm going to have to look it up, but I think it's probably something like, if I had to guess, I would guess 20 meters.
Wow.
All right, so I can beat a sea lion. All right, no, that's all I really needed to know. Okay, so we got a ton of fan questions. We won't bombard you with a bunch of them, but we did cherry pick some of the ones that we thought would be fitting. One of the things that we do here, Dan, is we let fans send in audio recorded questions, and we did get a few of those as well. So let's start off with an audio question.
Hey guys, huge fan of the show, been listening since day one. My question is for Dan. What is your favorite thing about this recent disc golf explosion? Is it the media coverage, the competition increase, the growth of more brands, or something different entirely? I would love to know. Thanks so much.
Wow. It's an interesting thing. Steve Dodge was on the PDGA board a number of years ago, and he came in strong. And his first meeting, I think he was sitting right next to me, and he laid out this big program for, get this, disc golf that people could watch film of. And I thought to myself, oh man, who's going to sit and watch disc golf? People want to play disc golf. They're not going to want to watch disc golf. I mean, I was so wrong. Oh, terribly wrong. Steve, if you're out there, I'm sorry, buddy. I was wrong. It is so fascinating to watch the emergence of the personalities, the talents, the abilities. So I guess the answer to the question is the exposure. But the exposure, part and parcel of the exposure, of course, is what's going on the screen. And of course, we're just beginning. I mean, we're just beginning. But I just find it so entertaining to watch that I guess that's the biggest surprise for me, because I didn't think it would be entertaining to watch. I thought I'd just like to play it.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect answer. Our second audio question came in specifically for Nate from a big fan of the show, but I'd like to maybe hear you weigh in on this one as well, Dan. So we'll go to our second audio question, and I'd like to hear from both of you guys on this one.
Hey, Nate and Jarett, this is Steve from Seattle. I'm loving listening to the podcast every week, so thanks so much. And Nate, I've also got a young daughter. She's lukewarm on playing disc golf with me, but she loves champs versus chumps. So sometimes she'll come out with me, but on the condition that I narrate my own shots a la Nate Sexton, and she'll get a good belly laugh if I hit a tree or get a roll away. And Nate, my question is, have you had your hand in designing any courses? And what's your process when you're looking at a chunk of property and envisioning the perfect layout for that community? Thanks again.
I think my answer will be a little bit disappointing, because I haven't really done like a start to finish course design. Not that, and I plan to. My long-term dream is to like own my own property with a course or 2 or 3 or however many I can get. But yeah, I've designed certainly holes and new positions for holes and extended par 3s into par 4s at some of my home courses over the years. But yeah, as far as process, I think I'll know more about that in the coming years. But I think for me, it's like identifying like the can't miss opportunities of like a signature hole on this property, and then like designing around that. I think it would be my general philosophy would be like, well, you have to do this. Like once you've walked around the place and you've seen what it has to offer, then I think it will become pretty clear to you, like the one that really excites you, or the opportunity to throw off the top of this hill and go down towards this with the backdrop of this. And so that I think would be like my number one thing. And then after that, it's just wanting it to have variety. I think that's what makes the best courses, is something that has all kinds of variety, as much as you can get in there, with lefts and rights and straights and distance and hills. And, the dream property would have, water and all those different features that let it feel unique every hole you step up to.
I think that course designing is probably some of the best fun in the sport. Really, it's some of the most satisfying work that I've ever done. And I'll share with you one story about a property up in the Sierras that we designed a course for a number of years ago. And I invited 4 friends to come and help me design it. And we had a map, and I gave each one of them a huge board with onion skin that laid over the map. And so they each went out, we all went out for 3 hours and drew our desired hole layouts, not trying to connect them, just laid out individual holes that we found. Then we brought them back together and laid all the onion skins over one another and saw where we had commonalities. We said, wow, we all saw, like you said, Nate, we all saw that throw from the top of the hill down there to behind the edge of the lake. That's a must. And so we circled all of those commonalities that we found, and then we linked them together. I think lots of times designers get into problems where they try to link them first, and then you end up with some weak links. And it's the only time I was able to do that process, but I really advise it. I mean, I think it really works out well, and I think it's some of the best fun there is in the sport.
Well, I love that idea, and I think my course design philosophy just changed. And you do that, I think that sounds like the best way.
Yeah, that works.
You know,
that sounds like so much fun to be able to have people independently take a look and see where you guys agree. That's cool.
Another thing about it is that in course design, there legitimately is an opportunity to give to people forever. My dad and I designed a course in a little campground, Dogwood Acres in Pennsylvania, and Dad funded it to put it in. It was really early, one of the first courses in Pennsylvania. They named it the Papa Jack course, and people play it every day. And in a very tangible way, he lives on there. And that's a gift that will continue to delight and challenge people, hopefully forever. And there aren't that many things in life that you can do that provide that. Yeah. So I hope everybody who loves the game gets a chance to do some of that kind of work.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Dan, we got a question on our Instagram from Banjo Disc Golf. Asks, why do you think there was such a drop-off on the popularity of disc sports after the mid to late 80s?
You know, I think that probably that was a gear shift, because part of it was that the years of the Wham-O running and owning everything were ending, and I think ending correctly. And when we shifted over to the individual sports driving on their own, that is when we had, at that point it was Ultimate on its own, prior to it being USA Ultimate, and the PGA on its own, and the Freestyle Players Association on its own. And that gear shift took some time. And the net result is that the sport, I think, has come back stronger and better than it could have been without that shift. But probably it was inevitable that there was going to be a little bit of a flat spot there. Some of that flat spot also is because we moved from it being a kind of a fad novelty to having to take its place as a legitimate member of the sports community. So if you look at the newspaper articles through that era, it was no longer, hey, flying saucers have come to Topeka. I mean, that story was already done. Now we had to do the hard work of being, hey, there's a new disc golf course in Topeka. It's a legitimate recreational activity. There's a legitimate sport going on. That was a harder battle, but I think it was a transition that had to be made.
Okay, awesome. Now, Nate, I know you and some of our listeners are going to be a little shocked by this, but we've got a question here from Jarett from Buffalo, and he wants to know, when obviously Wham-O and the Frisbee were it was what everybody was using. It was how the game was being played. after Dave and the guys invented that beveled edge and Innova kind of broke in, was there ever any desire for Wham-O or Frisbee to try to get involved in that kind of disc design to compete?
Oh, absolutely. Wham-O, and I was with them at the time. We had discs that were similar, like the 86 is still out there. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's mainly relegated to being a putter now, but the 86 was an attempt on Wham-O's part to have a more aerodynamic rim, and pretty much anything that wanted to be competitive in golf after the developments that Dave introduced, anything that wanted to be a driver or a mid-range at that point had to have some improved aerodynamics. So everyone had to follow. I mean, that was a pivotal breakthrough that changed everything. So it was no longer even feasible to have a blunt-nosed, high-profile disc that was anything at that point. It was a putter or approach disc. So yeah, one way or another, people had to go along. Now, of course, some of the design of the rim, as Dave pointed out, was proprietary. So there were legal struggles about that as to what is too close, and a lot of those things were resolved over time. But yeah, Wham-O wanted to get involved. But the thing is that I don't think that Wham-O / then Mattel was ever really designed to be nimble enough to be truly competitive in the disc golf market, because it was such a specialty item produced by a specialty company. In fact, when I was at Mattel Sports for a period there, I had Innova design and produce for us some discs that we put out with Wham-O labeling on it. You might remember the 44, the 78, the 77. All of those were discs that Innova produced under license for us, because Wham-O just really wasn't in a position to do the kind of developmental work that Innova was. And I mean, when I told Wham-O, well, you have to weigh every disc, that didn't sound like a good fit for them.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, they have so much else going on, to try to compete with a company that's trying to do only one thing.
Yeah, just another strong question from that fella. Coming into our email, Fernham asks, of all the different disc sports that you've participated in, which one is your favorite and why? So I guess he's talking about DDC and Ultimate and disc golf, and what did you prefer the most and why?
Wow, I guess the one that my favorite is the one that I just played last, but for sheer visceral enjoyment, it's hard to beat on the beach with the right breeze and friends who know what they're doing. A freestyle jam with the right breeze is a pretty amazing thing. DDC at its best, I've had many people who have been around a long time who say, you could take everything else away, just leave me DDC. This is going to turn into a non-answer. Disc golf.
It's fine with me.
When you're really in the groove, it's hard to compare with disc golf, especially as a lifetime, ask Don Shin, a lifetime game. Disc golf you can literally do forever. Being able to throw distance is like jumping over the edge of Niagara in a barrel. I mean, there must be no feeling like that. A great MTA is truly an act of God. And there aren't too many games as good as Ultimate. Other than that, did I answer that?
I feel like that's the perfect answer, because I mean, I think you're like approaching 70 years throwing. Like how can we expect you to have one favorite? You've tried it all and enjoyed it all, and it's got to be in phases. You got to have years where you're more committed to one discipline, and yeah, I don't think of you as a specialist. I think of you as a guy who's been there for all of it.
Well, the real secret is I really wish I was a guts player.
Guts scares me. I got that one. That one went right past me. I've seen people play it, and I never thought like, oh man, played. I sure wish I could go play that.
Did you say it went right past you? Very
yeah, well, that's a good. That would be a good joke. Yeah, but that was accidental.
Well,
but yeah,
sometime when you can fit it into your busy schedules, you've got to go to IFT and see and play in IFT, because the International Frisbee Tournament, the Guts Championship, there's nothing like it. I mean, they are the rock stars of the sport.
Yeah.
And Nate, you would be serious trouble on the offensive end. I can tell you, they would not like that. But the bad news is they're throwing it back.
Yes, definitely.
I will tell you one thing that you've added from this podcast, Dan, is Anna has messaged me and said that she is never saying disc golf again. She's only referring to it as space race from now on. So I'll know what she's talking about as far as that goes. We did get a fun question in here to the email. Glenn asks, with you playing through so many generations and seeing so many different incarnations of the discs, when you're out playing today, do you ever bring out the oldies and toss them?
I have some oldies in my bag. In fact, I just had to retire. I'd been throwing a gum putter for many years. I mean, probably 30 years. But when I was watching the putting championship this winter, I laid out the cones in my backyard, and I couldn't reach from the longest station. And I came to the conclusion that it's just those discs are too slow. So I'm now trying to discover a faster putter. And I had been approaching with a 50 mold, one of the world-class discs, and I just switched that out for a Zephyr. So I don't have any truly really old discs left in there. But yeah, especially for freestyle. The freestyle discs are still the old Super Pro and that kind of thing. That's my favorite. So yeah, and I have my dad's discs. I've got a really sweet original Eagle that was Dad's, and I'll often throw that for a turnover long approach shot, and I mean it's great. If the game only had that disc, we'd be happy. It's a lovely flyer.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I don't want to take too much more of your time here, Dan, especially because I feel like if we try to jam it all in, I won't have an excuse to ask Nate to have you come back on soon, because this has just been amazing. I personally am really enjoying these lessons and hearing these stories of the people that have paved the way to get the game to where it is today. And there certainly is. The sport's not looking the way that it is without guys like you. So, I certainly thank you for coming on and spending the time with us and answering some questions and telling some stories, man.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm really flattered to join the list of people who you've had on, and it was really fun hanging out with you, because I think sometimes, when you go to a big tournament these days and all these really famous guys are there, and I'm just kind of wandering around, I feel like, like Bill Walton showed up at a Lakers game and he says, so LeBron, where are you guys going after? I mean, yeah. Okay, Bill, thanks for coming. No, it's been really fun. I'm delighted to get a chance to talk with you.
Yeah, it was. I'm so happy that you were interested, and as from the first time I got the chance to see you speak at any kind of event, I don't even remember which time it was, but anytime I hear you're going to be somewhere, you're going to speak at the Hall of Fame, that's must see speech for me, because I just love hearing your perspective and hearing your jokes, because you're always funny every time you get up there and do something, a public speaking thing. So always look forward to a chance when I get to interact with you, and really happy to have had you on the show.
Well, thanks so much.
All right, Nate, that was an amazing conversation we had with Stork. I mean, you keep bringing these guests on that are teaching these lessons, and I think people are really starting to dig this kind of, back dig that you're doing into disc golf by bringing on some of the forefathers and telling some stories, man.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot too. It's amazing. I mean, it just doesn't make sense when I think about his life and how he's just like, and then I was there and played the very first college ultimate game ever and kicked ass and got the MVP, and they carried me off the field, off the parking lot, and just to be there for WIFDIF and the PDGA and the beginning of the Ultimate Players Association and the Frisbee Players or the Freestyle Players Association. It's just like, man, I mean, it makes me think of those ESPN things where they go like, Marshawn Lynch, a football life. And it just feels like Stork, a Frisbee life, man. I mean, he's still going strong, obviously, but just the stories and the wealth of knowledge and experience and how much energy he has put into elevating disc sports. It's just, it's just definitely the Mount Rushmore material. It's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, PDGA number 3.
Yeah, that's not messing around.
No, he got in from the ground floor. So, we're all out there enjoying this, listening to these podcasts, watching coverage, and out there playing. And a lot of it is because of guys like Dan and some of the other folks that we have spoke to. And we've got more coming. We're going to keep doing this, I think. We'll mix in some of your friends from the tour, but I'm really enjoying these history lessons and hearing these stories.
Yeah, and we've got kind of next week. I mean, I think we can reveal it now. Next week's guest is going to be 5-time women's world champion Juliana Korver, kind of bridging that gap. She's definitely not, I wouldn't call her old school, but she, we're going to hear some great stories, hear about the beginning of her career, what she's doing now. She's just been kind of coming back to disc golf a little bit more lately. Still, obviously, a fantastic player. And yeah, really looking forward to our next episode with Juliana Korver.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. So there's the jump on it. You guys have questions for Juliana and Nate, you know how to reach us. You can go ahead and send your audio questions to runningitpodcast@gmail.com. You can go ahead and find us on Instagram at runningitwithnate Sexton. I am at JarettOr222. He is at Frisbee Nate. And we are out of time. Nate, I'll tell you what, there was no laying up today, man.
No, I can't. I would be embarrassed to lay up in front of the Stork.
Yeah, we had to run it, guys. Make sure you check out our sponsors. Special thanks again, Fisher Disc Golf, Cab Coffee Roasters. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you guys next week.